What's up, Mortgage Coach community? Dave Savage coming to you live with Andrew Paul. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, Dave. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, man. You've got your Zoom game, man. I love the Echelon Front background there.
We've got it dialed in. We've done this just a handful of times, so we had to build it out a little bit.
Well, you guys are just doing an incredible job of leadership. Jocko Willink is one of my favorite leaders. I have told multiple people that I think the book Extreme Ownership is the most important leadership book of this decade. And I think it's one of those books that people will be talking about from a leadership perspective 100 years from now. Is just an important handbook for leadership. I know you feel the same way.
Absolutely. Extreme Ownership is awesome. It's the cornerstone. And then, the follow-on books are just as important, like the dichotomy of leadership. So it's like, you gotta do that. And then, of course, Jocko's written a few other books too, that are great handbooks too, but Extreme Ownership and the dichotomy of leadership together are extremely important to do both of them.
I do agree, because the dichotomy of leadership, too much of a good thing is not a good thing. It is good. It's just that book kind of kicked it off with me. And so anyways, so people know you. I think everyone in our community knows you as a mortgage professional. And I know when I did my interview, I don't know how many years ago it was, 3 or 4 years ago, with Jocko, it was you and Jocko, and you were a loan officer. But tell us what you're up to, and then let's get into leadership and planning.
Well, yeah, just kind of the quick story, Dave, and for those who know me, my background was in the military, I was in the SEAL teams. I left active duty, went right into the mortgage business, and that's what I was doing for 13 years. And about 2 years ago, building my loan business, building a branch and a team, et cetera. Meanwhile, Leif and Jocko were building Echelon Front. They wrote the book Extreme Ownership. They took the lessons that were learned on the battlefield that we all brought home, but then they started to implement them in the training commands and training that next generation of leaders on to prepare for battle, et cetera. And then codified all that stuff into these laws of combat, wrote the book Extreme Ownership, and started building Echelon Front as a company. About 2 years ago, just as the company's growing, needed to add, instructors to the team, staff, operational capacity, and things like that. We were actually in San Diego for the commissioning of the USS Monsieur. And they were like, hey, why don't you come on board? It was a little bit more involved in that. But so about 2 years ago in March, I joined the team at Echelon Front. Technically my job title is the chief of staff, and I'm also a leadership instructor. And it's been awesome to, be able to take my experiences in the military and weave in with Leif and Jocko and the other Echelon Front instructor staff to share these experiences, share these lessons, and see how it impacts people across all kinds of businesses, all kinds of sectors and industries, and leaders at all different levels within their organizations. And the impact is real. I mean, we see these changes happening within organizations. So last couple of years, I've been, with Echelon Front doing that. It's been tremendous, really rewarding for me to be able to make that transition. And of course, I still have the mortgage company. I still have the team that's continuing to execute. And don't think for 1 second I'm not taking all this experience and all this opportunity with Echelon Front and all these lessons of leadership and weaving them into everything that happens inside my mortgage company. And those results have been real as well. And so tons of guys from Benchmark will be at Muster as well, of course, because I wouldn't let that opportunity slip by.
I love that. I'm looking forward to seeing my Benchmark brothers and sisters. And I'm bringing my son, Jack Savage, to the Muster in Dallas next month. So pretty pumped up there to be there with my 18-year-old son. Can't wait for that. So every time I see you, bro, thank you for your service and for everyone at Echelon Front, for fighting for our freedom. So I appreciate you, brother. So we're talking to mortgage professionals here, and we're bringing leadership to them. And I talk all the time, well, I'm known as a technologist, and I run a company called Mortgage Coach, and it's a technology company. I talk about all the time how important technology is to your success. And you're seeing that more than ever right now, where the loan officers that are using their CRMs, that are using technology, are killing it. But more importantly than technology is leadership. And that's another trend that I think is just undeniable, that mortgage professionals that use technology and are great leaders are just mopping it up. And I'm going to share a few stats in a few minutes. But why don't you just speak to that? Like, I want to have this conversation in 3 chapters: leadership, planning, and then muster. I want to get as many mortgage professionals we can into the muster event. I know it's not completely sold out yet. So maybe we can get a few more mortgage coach community at the muster. But let's just talk about leadership and your take as to why it's so important, and what are some of the most important lessons you're giving right now in leadership to other mortgage professionals in your benchmark family.
Well, Dave, for one thing, we do keynote speeches, we do half-day, full-day workshops at Echelon Front, and as I've gotten to do numerous iterations of that, some of the things that we talk about is just about how, as we learned in the Battle of Ramadi, which was like the birthplace of these lessons of leadership that we teach at Echelon Front, the battlefield is constantly evolving and changing. And all these examples and stories, we pull from combat and from battle, but it's just an analogy. It's just a story to go along and for you to understand where these lessons come from. So our battlefield was the battlefield of Ramadi, in the Battle of Ramadi in 2006. Your battlefield is playing out. Maybe it's on the manufacturing floor and getting people within your organization to adapt to a new process. Maybe it's through a sales process as you're trying to build relationships in your marketplace to sell. In this case, maybe it's mortgages, et cetera. But that battlefield is constantly evolving and changing. So one of the things we talk about, you're a technologist, and so, but technology is constantly changing, right? And this is one of the things that we talk about. I mean, I always like to joke, at some point, sort of in the keynote, it's like, hey, everybody, it's time for a social media break. So pull out your Blackberries for me, And it's like, who's got a Blackberry? There's like one guy in the room usually has got a Blackberry. I'm like, you're the one, right? And we talk about things like BlackBerry, right? So BlackBerry, where was, BlackBerry was king of the hill years ago, right? And what was BlackBerry's thing, right? What was their thing, Dave?
Well, first of all, it was called the Crackberry.
The Crackberry.
It was email. I mean, you could just type out an email so fast.
It was the keyboard, right? It was the keyboard on this deal, and they loved the keyboard. Then they had the little scroll wheel, right? The side wheel, and then they did the wheel in the middle. But it was the keyboard, right? And it was like, oh, people love our keyboard, And then Apple comes along and goes, no keyboards. We're going to use our finger. And BlackBerry's like, no, people love our keyboard. And where's BlackBerry today? They failed to adapt to the changing environment, the changing battlefield, and so technology evolves, and so it's a tactic, and we have to be ready. We have to be willing to innovate and adapt to a changing battlefield or a changing environment. Right? The enemy gets a vote; they start to adapt to our tactics, our techniques, and we then have to adapt our tactics. So strategy doesn't change. If you think strategically, that's the leadership level stuff. Tactics change, right? BlackBerry to Apple, right? I mean, Eastman Kodak, right? Blockbuster, now it's Netflix, right? I mean, we history is littered with examples.
Uber.
Right? Taxis and Uber, 100%, right? So, so from a leadership perspective, when you can take a step back, you can detach emotionally, observe that changing battlefield, and be willing to adapt, to innovate and adapt. That's where you're going to be able to stay ahead of your competition, to be able to stay relevant and things like that. So we use technology, absolutely. We have to be aware of how that technology is evolving, and we can't stay emotionally tied to it either. If something else is emerging that is more, applicable to what, what's happening now, right? So technology is great, but leadership, we believe that if you can lead, if you can build relationships, if you can implement the laws of combat that we talk about in extreme ownership and balance those things in the dichotomies of leadership, then you can solve any problem ultimately through leadership. And of course, there are traits and qualities that come alongside that. So I would say that, if you can become a better leader, then you can innovate and adapt to whatever or however that battlefield changes over time.
And I couldn't agree more. When I look at the companies that we serve, and we have companies that have all the bells and whistles and all the technology and all the integrations, and some of them have the best utilization, but there's some that don't. And then I have companies that have Mortgage Coach that don't have every integration, but they have incredible adoption. And what's the difference? It's leadership. It's self-leadership, it's team leadership, it's organizational leadership. And let's face it, when you look at America's best loan officers, they're great leaders to their realtors. They're great leaders to the consumers that they serve. So I'm going to give a quote and I'm going to give a stat, and then I want to talk about planning for 2021. So the quote, I said this from stage a couple of years ago at a digital mortgage conference where I said, look, the tech companies are not your biggest threat. They're not going to take loan officers out of the business, but loan officers that use technology will crush loan officers that don't. I think I said it a little differently. Well, here we are, guys. It's 2020. I first said that up from the stage in 2018, and now they have crushed. Here's some stats for you. There's 105,000 loan officers in America that haven't done a loan. Now, some of those are working for a team. Some of those are bank LOs. There are 167,000 loan officers that have closed less than 30 loans this year so far. There are 38,000 loan officers that have closed between 30 and 60 loans this year. There are 28,000 loan officers that have closed 60 to 100 loans. There are 25,000 loan officers that have done over 100 loans, 100 to 200. There are 6,200 loan officers that have done 200 to 300 loans already this year. And there are 3,566 loan officers that have done over 300 loans this year. Right now, like November, have already done that. And so here's my takeaway, guys. 2 years ago in 2018, do you know how many loans the top 1% did? It was about 150. It was somewhere between 100 and 150 loans. If you did that, you were a 1%er. Well, guys, today, if you want to be a 1%er, you're doing over 300 loans. Now, granted, interest rates have dropped. It's raining loans. It's easy to do it. But here's the deal, guys. Everybody that's doing over 100 loans a year consistently has team. They're leaders. And so leadership is a requirement to crushing it in the future. And look at the stats. I mean, there's 30 some odd thousand loan officers that have done over 100 loans, and they're great leaders. So with that said, I want to talk about planning. And if anyone's listening to this right now and they're like, you know what, I need to upgrade my leadership. It's November 2020. We've got the muster in December, but just give us some advice on what should we do to plan? Like, how do leaders plan, and what can they do to plan to be a better leader?
A couple of things on that. So first of all, Dave, it's these big teams, of course, they have teams. These guys are doing a ton. So, but no person is an island. So in order to succeed, you have to implement what we call cover and move, which essentially is teamwork. But in order to implement teamwork, you've got to work together. You've got to build relationships. Now, if you want to be able to grow, you want to be able to do more than what you already have. Leadership, sometimes I feel like people get lost in this concept of leadership because I think it only applies to maybe it's like that C-suite people in their organization. Oh, well, leadership, that's for the CEO, that's for the CFO. No, what we have found both on the battlefield and in business and in the boardroom is that the most effective teams, the most effective companies, the most effective organizations have leadership, and leadership at every single level, not just at the ivory tower C-suite, C-level folks, but all the way down to what we say, to the frontline troopers who aren't in charge of anybody else except for their little piece of the mission. And they take ownership of their piece of the mission, and they execute. Point here is that leadership starts with you at the individual level. If you have to first be able to lead yourself before you can lead the man or woman to your right and left, or then an even larger organization. First of all, who the heck's going to follow you if you can't even do something yourself, or you're not willing to do the work yourself? If you're not willing to show up and be, a member of a team, if you're not willing to cover and move and look out for the other, who wants to be a part of that? Okay, so you have to be a good team member. You have to be a good teammate. You have to build relationships. You have to care about your fellow team members if you want to build a team. So building that team is what helps you to create capacity. And then you have to be able to prioritize and execute. So one of the laws of combat is prioritize and execute. You can't do everything all at once. And so as you talk about planning for, call it 2021, what are you going to do next year? Are you just going to start like utilizing some new tool? Or are you just going to start sending a bunch of emails? You're going to just start working on a website? You have to take a step back and you have to look around. You have to, what we say, you have to detach. You have to look around. You have to assess the situation and prioritize and execute. That's the third law of combat. And so taking the time to be able to do that, carving out time in your day or in your week or in your month in order to prioritize and execute is what's going to allow you to execute the right things and to direct your efforts in the right direction. But it's prioritize and execute, right? So some people are just very focused on execution. They just go, 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 go. And there's a time to do that. There's definitely a time to execute. But, if you just start sort of blazing a trail and chopping wood and imagine you're out in the forest and you just start chopping through the forest in some random direction. Yeah, you're working hard. You're cutting down a bunch of brush. You're making a path, but you're going the wrong way. Okay.
Right.
So you also have to prioritize. You have to prioritize. But some people, they got caught up in prioritizing. They just want to sit there and plan, and then they plan and they put a PowerPoint together, and then they have another meeting about it, and then they plan to have the meeting, and then they meet about the meeting, and then they never go get anything done. So it's prioritize and execute. You've got to do both. Okay, we don't want to just work in one direction without making sure that we're going in the right direction. And we also need to take the time, but we also have to execute as well. So it's prioritize and execute. Now, it's kind of hard sometimes if you're really, 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 really busy and you don't have a team to take that step back, to detach, to look around. We also talk about, Dave Burke, who's, probably our senior leadership instructor at Echelon Front, was a Top Gun pilot. He does sections and pieces on what we call the OODA loop. And that's something that fighter pilots use on how they maneuver in dogfight, basically. And OODA stands for observe, orient, decide, act. And you just have to do this over and over again. You have to observe the situation, orient yourself to it, decide, essentially prioritize on what items need to be done, and then act. And then it comes back around, you have to observe again. Now, how did what you just did affect the environment? Okay, your prioritization list, after you've executed for a while, you have to reprioritize again, because now the battlefield has shifted. You've affected that space. You've affected that battlefield. The priorities may have changed. And so you have to continually reprioritize and then execute again, and do this over and over and over again.
So community, I want you guys to write a few things down. If you didn't write down OODA loop, it's OODA loop. Boyd's OODA loop. And when you look at the most elite people in every walk of life, they do the OODA loop the fastest. So make sure you guys check that out. Google it. It's mentioned in Jocko's books a couple different times, I think. And then, one thing I just occurred to me while we were talking is, like, when you do your planning, typically you have these buckets. I've got family, I've got spiritual, I've got money, I've got business. You have all these categories of who you are as a human being to be your best. I'm going to push everybody, have a category for leadership. If you are a referral-based local mortgage professional, growing your personal leadership is essential to your success. Leveraging technology, using your CRM hourly, using tools like Mortgage Coach with every client. You give people a link. You need to make sure that you have a great digital experience. But I would make, to your point, those are tactics. Those are skills, micro tactics. But leadership, if you become, self-disciplined, if you become a good leader of other people, even if you're listening to this and you're in that group that's closing less than 30 loans this month or this year, and you don't have a team, well, it starts with you. Become a great leader of yourself, and then you can grow and be a leader of others. So I want to push you guys to do that. If you were giving people like 3 checklists, and it might be, read one of your books. I don't know, if you had a checklist of 3 things to give people between now and the end of the year to prepare for 2021, what would be some of your leadership to-dos to help grow leadership for a mortgage professional?
Well, for one thing, I would read the book Extreme Ownership. and the dichotomy of leadership if you haven't. And you alluded to it earlier. We have an event coming up in December, the Muster event taking place in Dallas, Texas. Come to a Muster event. It's an event that it's nothing like you've ever been to before. I mean, there's all kinds of training events that you can go to. I know in the mortgage business, in the real estate industry, et cetera. A lot of them are so industry focused. This is a conference about leadership, hands-on problem solving for you to grow as a leader so that you can solve your own problems yourself, your family problems, your business problems, your team problems. We believe that all problems are a leadership problem. And I don't know where else you can go to an event that's anything like this, where you can actually go meet other leaders across all kinds of different organizations who are in the game, who are bringing their level of leadership up to the next level so that they can solve their problems. And we don't like espouse to know how to solve technology problems at Mortgage Coach, right? But we know that if we can, and as Echelon Front, as a company, we know that, Dave, if we can work with like your company and make better leaders out of the people who work at Mortgage Coach, that they can then solve the technology problems, if you have any, at Mortgage Coach. You know what I'm saying? So we believe that all problems are a leadership problem, and that if you can actually become a better leader, it starts with you, the individual. You can lead yourself, and then you can lead others, and then you can start to solve your problems. And that starts with taking ownership. Hence the title of the book, Extreme Ownership. The idea that all problems are yours to solve. And at the moment that you start blaming anybody else or even any kind of external circumstances, the moment that you are failing at extreme ownership.
So guys, I would highly recommend, even if you've already read Extreme Ownership, listen to the audiobook. I have read it, marked it up, studied it, and I love the audiobook. It's one of my all-time favorite audiobooks, listening to Jocko and Leaf tell a war story, tie it to a business concept, re-listen to it between now and the end of the year. I'm going to be going there with my son in December. I think it's December 3rd and 4th. I know there's at least a dozen other mortgage leaders that are going to be going to this. Walk us through the event. It's a 2-day event. All I know is it's 2 days of leadership, and it starts at 4:30 in the morning doing some type of a workout.
Starts in the morning with optional PT.
Okay, so walk us through it. Give us the lay of the land. And time out. I know that the dozen mortgage professionals that are coming to that event, they're going to watch this. So if there is any prep, like, hey guys, before the event, here's how to prepare yourself to get the most out of it. Walk us through the event and give us a little bit of prep.
So the mornings are going to start with PT or physical training. And the good thing is that, they're optional, but the PT is designed so everybody can participate. Okay. We're not going to go run 10 miles and, if you're not a runner, that you can't do it. Okay. These are all going to be, calisthenic type things, burpees and push-ups. And, we do little stations where we move around. So, if you can only do 10 push-ups in a minute, then you only do 10. Okay. If you can do 60 push-ups in a minute, then great. You do 60. But the idea is that, one of the mindsets that we have that we, talk about as a cornerstone to extreme ownership is the concept of discipline equals freedom. All right. Having discipline actually creates freedom. It creates opportunity. And it's a dichotomy because they seem like opposite things. And so one of those things is getting up early in the morning and working out. I mean, the health benefits of staying physically fit are undeniable, right? And so that's integrated into this event. So optional PT, we say it's optional, but come on, be there. If you've got a health condition or something, that's the caveat. But starts with PT in the morning at 4:30. And it's a great, it's a lot of fun. And, you're around other folks who are out there getting after it and putting out. Come back, shower up, kick off the event with various presentations, obviously from Leif and from Jocko. So it's going to start with, of course, the laws of combat. So if you've never read the book, so you're not familiar with what Echelon Front, who we are as a company or what the core concepts are, you're going to get that introduction. Then there's live interaction. So we have an opportunity to speak directly with Leif and Jocko and other Echelon Front instructors about your specific challenges, about specific scenarios. Like, how would you handle this situation? And Leif and Jocko and other instructors will answer those questions. In addition, there's sections on doing group, team, and self-assessments. So one of the things that we always have to do as leaders and as individuals, we have to assess where we are. in these different character traits, and how do we take ownership of where we are maybe out of balance in as a leader in different categories. So there'll be sections on assessments, and then a few other little surprises that we've had to mix up and change here because of COVID. I will tell you that it's a socially distanced muster, so large auditorium, tables are all set, 6 feet apart and things like that, and we'll be observing, you know, recommendations from CDC with masks and things like that. Lots of hand washing. So if you're sick, don't come. But we're going to be observing all of those recommended procedures to keep everybody as safe as possible and mitigate risk. But we're going to integrate, obviously, like I said, physical training, leadership lessons from all of our instructors. Leif and Jocko, of course, leading the way with their hands-on personal experiences and stories and examples from working with companies from across the country in all different kind of businesses, sectors, and examples from leaders at every level as well. Okay, so this does not apply to just C-suite level stuff executives. There's frontline troopers who are running manufacturing floors and drilling wells out in the field that this applies to. It applies to every single person who is in any kind of a leadership role. And the wink, wink, nudge, nudge, everybody's a leader. That's the problem. I think that sometimes people think it doesn't apply to them because they think that they're not in charge of a group of 10 people or a group of 5 people. You're in charge of at least one person, and that's you. So leadership starts with you. And so there'll be opportunities like that.
And guys, there's tactics, and there's skills, and there's philosophies, and there's principles. And then there's the dichotomy of all of those things. So if you want to network, be around people that are growing leadership, come to the muster. If you can't come to number 12 for a host of reasons, come to another one. Put it on your bucket list. If you are a mortgage professional and you want to be the best leader you can be, this is a great way to do it. And hey, watch the book. Listen to the interview that I did with Jocko Willink. I still have that as one of the all-time best interviews that I've ever done at Mortgage Coach. And thank you, Andrew, for helping me get Jocko into that interview. And Andrew and I interviewed him together at the time. Andrew is still a producing branch manager. By the way, how are you doing it, dude? How are you being a producing branch manager, a father, and chief of staff for Echelon Front? Like, clue me in.
Well,
how are you pulling that off?
It's been a testament to implementing the laws of combat and living and practicing what we preach at Echelon Front. I can't do it all on my own. So I have to implement decentralized command. I have to empower leaders within the mortgage organization to run with things because I'm not around to run things on the day-to-day like I used to be. And so I rely on a team. By the way, my mortgage team is going to be at the muster event. You know why? Because I know that if everybody on my mortgage team can implement these laws of combat and become better leaders, then they're empowered to solve problems without me having to micromanage things, without me having to step in and solve them myself, which frees me up to be able to make a bigger impact, to reach further, to find, to serve other people in other industries, including working at Echelon Front. The only reason that I can really work at Echelon Front and have a functioning mortgage company is because we've instilled these principles in the mortgage company, in the team, where those loan officers, those production partners, those staff members, they are acting out as best as possible. We're always trying to get better at this every day. They're living out these principles themselves. And so for me, the mortgage company is my hands-on leadership lab where I am implementing the laws of combat and everything that we teach at Echelon Front. I mean, if I can't do that, then I shouldn't be a leadership instructor at Echelon Front. So to me, like, I can't do this. I can't be a leadership instructor and chief of staff at Echelon Front if my mortgage company can't function the way it is. And the only way it is because I am actually factually implementing the laws of combat in practice on a daily basis by empowering my team to execute in my absence, leaning on decentralized command, having my team members take ownership, admitting where they're wrong, stepping up, innovating and adapting to a changing environment. And so because those things are really happening, that's the answer to your question, Dave. It's because those things are really happening. And it's not because I sit here and preach at my team and say, you need to do this. I invite them to participate. I bring them to the muster. We implement and we walk the talk. We live out extreme ownership. We live out humility and admitting where we're wrong or where we could have done things better. And when I make a mistake, I admit that. And you know what happens is that then my teammates go, actually, you know what, that was my fault. I should have done that better. And then they step up and they take ownership and they take the initiative and they get default aggressive or have what we call bias for action. And so because they really do those things, I'm able to be a leadership instructor at Echelon Front.
Love it. Well, dude, I am looking forward to seeing you in person, socially distanced, in Dallas, Texas. Thank you for making time to jump on Zoom and bring this leadership to the mortgage coach community. Guys, if you got value from this, give it a like, share it with your mortgage team. If you have a favorite quote from Echelon Front, Jocko, I interviewed Leaf also, put it down below. If you have questions, put it in chat, whether you're watching this in YouTube or our Facebook group. Andrew and I will make sure your questions get answered. We'll also put a link to make it easy for you to find it. But guys, you can Google Echelon Front muster, Jocko Willink muster. You could Google it, but we'll put a link to make it easy. And Andrew, any closing thoughts or any closing words before we wrap it up?
You know, Dave, I would just say that, like, this is like it's lights out. If you're in the mortgage business, obviously you're listening to this podcast, presentation, Zoom, Facebook Live. If you're in the mortgage business, nobody in the mortgage business is talking about leadership. It is the untapped, untouched opportunity for you to put rocket fuel on your business and build relationships with your real estate agents. I mean, nobody talks like this. Everybody is talking about, everything else. Oh, I can close on time. My rates are there. Everybody's talking about the same thing. Nobody's talking about leadership. You want to build a team. You want to attract the best people to your organization, whether it be referral partners, whether it be processors, production partners, or other producing loan officers. Become a better leader. Nobody's talking like this. You will stand out amongst the crowd. It is like the best kept secret for you to get involved and to grow yourself as a leader. Show up at muster, get on the path, stay on the path. And I have every bit of confidence you will see an incredible uptick in your business and in your life.
And guys, you will be a better human. I mean, I am going because I want to be a better dad. I am bringing my son because I want him to be a better leader of himself. So come because it's a business advantage, and using technology and being a leader are the two traits of the most successful people in the mortgage business. I do believe this is going to be the best decade ever for great leaders who use technology in the mortgage business, but also believe that we, in this crazy world of COVID and the diversity that's taking place in America, we need to be the best leaders of ourselves and the best leaders we can be, just to be good humans. So come join us. Andrew, you the man, bro. Appreciate you.
This pump. Good to see you, Dave.
All right. Take care, everybody. This call is a wrap.